Welcome to Woking Up.
White supremacy. White supremacy is the fringe of the fringe.
This is a mini-series brought to you by Polite Conversations.
All of a sudden we can't talk about Neanderthal DNA anymore.
Here I'll talk about my journey into and out of being a new atheist Sam Harris fan.
In and of itself, that video is not evidence of racism.
I'm your ex-Muslim host, Ina. No, not the right-wing kind. Thank you for tuning in.
This is how the left will die.
Hello there, dear listeners. We're back with Woking Up 10. Another unexpected detour from my scheduled Woking Up topics. You know, before the tragic, horrific events of October 7th, I thought I was going to jump in for one sort of main closing episode of Woking Up and start wrapping things up with this miniseries. But it appears the podcast gods had other plans because Sam has been pumping out so much bullshit at such an incredible pace that I've been inundated with requests to cover it. I mean, just in 1 month, he's pumped out 4 back-to-back episodes, each more demented and bloodthirsty than the last. And this is just on his own show. 4 episodes of basically pure Israeli propaganda, which I guess falls nicely in line with his perpetual anti-Muslim hate boner, but it truly has been incessant. It's a painful time to be a Harrisologist. There are simply not enough of us out there, probably because it's a gross and slimy subject to specialize in. You kind of want to shower after every sickening, slippery sentence you hear in that overly Xanaxed voice. But yeah, so on October 12th, he put out The Sin of Moral Equivalence, where he talked about how civilized and ethical Israel was in its mass murder and how barbaric its enemies were. Already by that point, the slaughter was unbelievably horrific. I covered that one in my previous episode of Woking Up. Then, on November 3rd, he put out The Infernal Logic of Jihad, because, you know, that's the one thing he thought was important to talk about as Palestinians and their babies were continuously being massacred in the thousands. Then, on November 7th, he put out The Bright Line Between Good and Evil, because, you know, he can't get enough of parroting Netanyahu's genocidal children of light versus children of darkness bullshit. And this episode was particularly vile even for him. In a time of rising violent anti-Muslim hate, he is taking the time to stress all his most dangerous generalizations about Islam and paint all Muslims as tacitly endorsing jihadism because they believe in the same Islamic scriptures as violent jihadists. You can sense the panic and desperation almost at having this opportunity to further exacerbate anti-Muslim hatred in a politically charged climate such as this. I've rarely seen him so repetitive in such a short period of time. Like, he really, really wants his audience to buy into it. He needs it. And that's not it. On November 16th, he put out Gaza and the Global Order, where he talked about the unraveling of the global order because, you know, everyone just won't fall in line and just accept what Israel is doing. And aside from all that, there's the 3-hour monstrosity we'll be covering, at least in part, today. I wish I could cover it all in one go, But alas, I am just one person who also likes to make episodes on other topics, and I simply don't have the budget to produce at an even faster pace. You can, however, help with that. If you sign up via patreon.com/nice mangoes, you get early access to episodes, and on the premium tiers, you get even earlier access and some premium exclusives too, like my brand new miniseries on the global far right. You also get to help ensure that Polite Conversations generally survives. And if enough of those who listen, and I know thousands do listen to the show, if even a small fraction helps support the work, it would go a long, long way. And believe me, the show really, really needs it right now, because I need to decide whether I'm going to keep this project going or if I need to shut it down and replace it with better paying work. So it's an important time. Down the road, if even more people support it, maybe someday I could hire some help. That would be a dream, and it would speed things up a lot. Anyway, if you like it and want to see more, please consider supporting the show. And now, where were we? Oh yes, well, guess what, guys? The gang's back together. I just simply had to do this one, also because my loving premium patrons voted for this one. Today you'll be hearing a bit of a two for the price of one. Eric Weinstein and Sam Harris got together again over on the very intelligently named and not at all teenage edgelord levels of embarrassing Triggernometry podcast. You get it? It's because the wokes are so easily triggered, and trigonometry is some intelligent sounding math thing, so you get to sound smart while making fun of the SJWs for being triggered. It's so brilliant, isn't it? Oh yeah. Okay, so today we'll be doing the IDW Pushes Israeli Propaganda edition of Woking Up. Look, it's no coincidence that their interest in skull shapes, birth rates, phrenology, Great Replacement conspiracy theories line up so nicely with the IDF's creepy-ass sperm retrieval unit and generally awful supremacist views. The first thing I want to mention is the audacity of the fucking thumbnail that went with this 2-part, 3-hour-long YouTube circle jerk. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. If you want to take a look, I will link a tweet of the image in the show notes, but make sure you aren't mid-sip into a beverage or something, because that will not stay in place. For those who won't bother looking it up, understandably, let me just describe it. Though I think no description could quite capture the "I love the smell of my own farts" feel of this image, but let me try. 2 incredibly smug, fairly close-up faces, Sam on the left and Eric on the right. Between them is an image of 2 flags, Palestine on the left side touching Sam's head, and Israel on the right touching Eric's head. Below the flags it says, "How do we," then in all caps, "solve this?" How do we solve this? Giving the impression that these 2 utter morons, still trapped in the phrenology era, have something of value to say on the topic that may even offer a solution to an issue as delicate and difficult as peace in the Middle East. And never mind the weirdness of the split between the Israeli and Palestinian flags in the thumbnail, with Eric on one side and Sam on the other, making it look as if they were arguing on opposite sides of the issue, and Sam happened to be on the pro-Palestinian side. I can assure you that is very much abso-fucking-lutely not the case. Just picture it. It is an unreal image. I get secondhand embarrassment from just looking at it. I cannot imagine being featured in such a cringe image. My God. But I mean, it fits right in with like Eric's claims about how long-form podcasting will literally save civilization or something. So yeah, all right, let's get into it. And you can see for yourselves just how far from solving this they are. Of course, Sam begins with his now incredibly repetitive and obscene point, especially in the face of what is currently happening right in front of our eyes.
The most obvious error that people will make now is to imagine that body count is the only measure by which the moral balance swings, right? So if Israel goes into Gaza and inadvertently kills more people, inadvertently kills more people than were killed on their side, they've done too much by definition.
You hear that word inadvertently? It's sure doing a lot of work there, right? We can see just how inadvertent their targeting of journalists and their families is, of hospital upon hospital and refugee camps is.
That's wrong in all kinds of ways, but the obvious way that it's wrong is that it completely ignores what people are actually attempting to achieve on both sides, what kind of world they're attempting to build, what their intentions actually are.
You see, that is just insulting the intelligence of the listeners. Though, to be fair, I mean, what kind of people actually take these clowns seriously anymore, right? I briefly touched on this point in the previous Woking Up too. It's ludicrous. He thinks that this is still a valid excuse. Please subscribe via patreon.com/nicemangoes to hear the full episode. By supporting on Patreon, you'll get access to all Patreon exclusive content, including Woking Up and early releases of polite conversations too, as well as special patron events like AMAs and Skype chats. If you enjoy the show, do consider supporting, because without listeners like you, deep dive content like this isn't possible.